never have any idea what is going on during testing, but I will say, as I was watching this year, I had a neutral, positive feeling. I was like, you know what, it could have gone better, it could have gone worse, but I wasn't actively freaking out until this morning when I read the publications put out, like, ranking how all the teams did in testing. And Ferrari, as you can see, did not perform well. Motorsport.com has them number 3, the race has them number 3, Autosport has them number 4, and ESPN has them second. Okay, you know, not terrible, but I feel like the general conclusion is, when you read all the coverage and also just like literally watch qualifying, that McLaren is like pretty clearly the fastest team still, which makes sense. That's where it was at the end of this year, but also disappointing because it kind of feels like Ferrari could potentially be stuck in this, like, they're almost there, but like not quite. And I mean, if they're behind Mercedes, I can't say it on YouTube, but you know what I'm thinking. And the fact that the race Autosport the race and Autosport, I meant to say, have Mercedes ahead of them is genuinely concerning. Third. And I mean, Autosport has them 4th. But I was like, you know what? Who knows? These people have no more information than the rest of us. They do have a little bit more technical expertise, perhaps. So I was like, you know what? Let's be rational. Let's go back and look at their predictions from last year and see how true those ended up being. And now, last year I think was a little bit more predictable than this year in terms of the order, but still it's a helpful comparison. So I did that, and you'll see it on your screen right now, and as you can see and probably understand, it did not make me feel any less stressed out than I was before, because, so motorsport.com, I couldn't find their 2024 testing rankings rather, because it was stuck behind a paywall, despite the fact that I literally pay for Autosport Plus, and it was like, you just need to log into your Autosport Plus account. I'm like, I am logged in. But for Autosport, their total accuracy was 60%. The race and ESPN were both 50% accurate. The more concerning thing, though, is the accuracy when it comes to the top 5, because I do feel like the bottom half of the field is generally closer together than the front of the field is. Also, people are just paying less attention, and they're gonna be like, these are experts, they're paying equal amount of attention. Like, there's 10 teams. It's impossible to pay equal amount of attention to all of them, but maybe you're right, listen. But my calculations kind of bear out my hypothesis on the matter, because the total accuracy for the top 5 from Autosport was 100%, the race was 100%, and ESPN was 80%. And how I calculated the accuracy was I took the results of quali from Bahrain last year, because in my mind, that's basically what we're trying to figure out right now, right? And as you can see up on the screen, I didn't do the regular point system, I just did 20 through 1 so that we could like accurately assess all teams, because obviously if none of the bottom half scored points and like they're all tied, that isn't really reflective of like the true order. And obviously shit happens in quali, and like this doesn't even really matter, it's about the race results, but I feel like this is a better measure of pace than the races, because there's more like variables during the race. And obviously race pace and stuff, it's not representative of that, but right now I do feel like we're all just trying to guess quali order. It's also not a perfect measure, because there will never be a perfect measure, because we'll never know a car's quote unquote true pace. There will always be drivers who overperform and drivers who underperform, but this is the best we could do at short notice. And as you'll see, the cumulative team order ended up being Red Bull and Ferrari were tied, but I did give them number 1 because Max got pole, duh. Then Mercedes, McLaren, Aston, Haas, Toro Rosso, Williams, Sauber, and Alpine. And that's how I just compared those against the predictions and the fact that Autosport was the most accurate and they have Ferrari 4th, this stresses me out. They got 100% of the top 5 right last year. I'm in danger. But that being said, it's only like 1 point off or 1 right answer off from the rest of them. So it's like not that much of a difference, and there wasn't that much variance in terms of how much all of them got correct. There is still reason for hope though. Ferrari have totally reconfigured their car for 2025. Specifically, they have a brand new front suspension. They switched from a push rod to a pull rod, and because of this, a bunch of other shit had to be rearranged, and they also re-angled their upper wishbone with the rear raised up, as opposed to McLaren that has the opposite. This is all from Autosport, by the way. But because of that, obviously they're still trying to get things figured out and figure out how to best set up the car for the new suspension. So they probably spent a lot of time working on that as opposed to, but McLaren also said that they totally redid their cars for this year, as did Ferrari, right? So I don't know if that's as much of an excuse as I would like it to be. And the fact that I'm sitting here and being like, well, maybe Ferrari development will save us is like alluding to, it's like, girl, have you ever watched a Formula One race one time in the last 10 years? And of course the Ferrari cult of PR minions, which I say lovingly, but it is true, have moved swiftly into action. And the talking point is kind of that it's unrealistic to expect them to beat McLaren or to outdevelop McLaren over the winter, which I think is an insane take from the same group of people who spent a good month trying to convince us that Adrian Newey sucked and we didn't need him. The best F1 engineer on the grid, if not of all time. But we don't need him because we're so good at building cars. Like, especially the development angle of it, like that will never not be an insane take to me. But we're not gonna get into the full Adrian Newey argument right now. Please, I beg of you, I probably shouldn't even have brought it up. To me, yes, I expect Ferrari to beat McLaren. McLaren started last year 425 seconds off the pace, and Ferrari hasn't been able to make up like 0.2 in the last 2 years, 3 years. And to me, to be stuck in P3 or fighting for P2 in the Constructors' Championship is obviously not the goal, right? The goal is to win a championship. So yes, I expect them to be better than McLaren. Like, what are we even talking about? And maybe they will be able to chip away from that gap in this 2-week break, or maybe all of these people are wrong and I'm wrong and they've secretly been sandbagging, please, through testing, and they're gonna show up and Charles Leclerc is gonna put it on pole. And is it I think Australia is first this year, maybe Bahrain, Australia, I think it's Australia. But the expectation that Ferrari will develop away this gap, that they will beat McLaren in development over the course of this season to the point where they can net time on track. In conclusion, please don't jump me Tifosi. I love you and I'm sorry, and I do want Ferrari to win, which is why, but I just simply can't sit here and and part of the reason I think that Ferrari can never get its shit together is this cult, this very Catholic Church-like mentality of we can never criticize this entity, it is sacrosanct, any talk against it will not be tolerated, from both the outside world and from within. And if you can't reflect on your own failings, you're never gonna be able to fix them. There's like 1,000 sayings across the world that all mean essentially that. I come to you from the future as I'm editing this video to say that that was extremely dramatic. It's literally just a ranking list after a few short days of qualifying. We don't really know. And qualifying was also super mixed. Like, there was weather, there was a freaking power outage. So it's not 100% representative. There's a ton of stuff we don't know. So I maybe didn't need to freak out to that extent. I'm sorry, I'm stressed. We have nothing to go on. But I will say the reactions from Lewis and Fred were super, super positive. I do feel like Charles was more mixed. Like, he was positive, then he was a little bit more subdued. And Lewis is the most positive human being on this earth. So there's that to contend with. We're not gonna know until we get to Saturday of the first race weekend. Also, it's definitely not true to say that Ferrari have struggled to make up 2/10 for the last 3 years. That was me being very hyperbolic about it. They have made great strides, particularly at the end of last year, which is why I think expectations were where they are. And if they are only a step behind McLaren, like, that's solid. Like, it's not that I've said like way too much, but I'm not redoing this again. I was spiraling, and thank you all for coming along and spiraling with me. I'll be continuing to do this probably for the rest of time, certainly at least until the end of next season, and then we get a fun delusional period. I'm still fully aboard the Charles 2025 World Champion bandwagon though. Maybe it'll be a super close season where it's really different at every track and there are like 3 or 4 teams in the mix. That would be awesome. And I feel like there is a lot more variance in the predictions from all the publications this year compared to last year. So that's also a positive indicator. I'm sorry for being so dramatic. It will happen again.